we're just really going to share a story. It's going to be conversational between Heather and I about some of our experiences. I'm Phil Odo with Closer Look General Contracting.
Yep, and I'm Heather Odo. We're out of Raleigh-ish, North Carolina. Been in RA for just a few years now, but we've been working together and living life together for quite some time. So when people ask me what I do, I tell them, I work together with my husband. We run a small business together, and invariably, oh God, I could never work with my spouse. It's what they always have to say.
Why do you think that is?
I think you got a relationship, right? You got all the dynamics of that. You've got chores and kids and finances and just all the things, and that's enough of a struggle at times. It takes work, right? And then, for regular people, they get to go to work 40 hours a week. They get to get out of the house. They get to have different friends. They get to have, some separation. But to do it together, it's different.
I can understand that, but from my perspective, my mindset is more of that I get to do this together and build a life with the person that I love most. So I really get to put my best foot forward, even when my foot goes in my mouth.
Yeah, and who better to dig deep with than the person that you're trying to run a business together for yourselves, for your family. So we're going to, like Phil said, we're going to tell our story, give you a little bit of a timeline and some of the lessons we've learned. We are by no means experts at marriage, business, life, none of these things, but we've learned a few things along the way.
Yeah, and I'm going to take some notes here. That's why I have my notepad, because I might be able to learn some things through this conversation.
But what we hope you get out of it is just a couple of things, more the mechanics of determining what role maybe suits you best, and if you've already figured that out, great. If not, we have some things that you might want to, give some thought to. How to deal with real life challenges that exist in partnerships. Have we come to work mad at each other about non-work stuff? Yes. Is it weird in the team meeting? Sure. Like you got to deal with those things in the office. Setting boundaries, adhering to those, finding balance, and I think the importance of a growth mindset is so central to the whole thing.
Yep. So we're just going to start with a little bit of a story here. I started Closer Look in 2005. I went full-time with the business in 2007. I made good progress through the foreclosure time, the downturn in the economy. Was making money, but I was haphazardly running a business. I suffered about $330,000 of embezzlement somewhere between 2014 and 17. It was my sister who did that. I was wondering what was going on with the business. I didn't have good financial controls. I was just at best haphazardly running a business. And I put her in prison, suffered depression, I was clinically depressed, and I had to make some hard decisions. Am I going to keep this thing going, or am I just going to try to find something else to do, go to work for someone else? Ultimately, I decided that I would dig in, obviously. I had a friend of mine, he was a sergeant major in the Marine Corps. He was helping me out just with some mindset stuff. He was at the house, and he's looking at my bookshelf, and he said, man, I see books on meditation, I see books on mountaineering, I see automotive books, but I don't see any books on business, Phil. I said, you got me, Bill. He recommended the book Traction by Gino Wickman. And, that's really where Heather's story and my story began. So I listened to this book on Audible because I really don't like to read. And I started to think that, maybe this visionary person sounds a lot like some characteristics that I have. But I almost thought that was too big a role for somebody like me. Thought it was too grand. So I asked Heather, will you come on this journey with me? Will you check out this book, see what you think?
Yeah. So to give you guys a little bit of a backstory, my background is in mental health counseling. Didn't know anything about construction, certainly didn't know anything about business. I'd been doing that for about 20 years, but I had the flexibility that I could help out, before work, after work, just to do a couple things, because I knew that he was really struggling. He had to let everybody go from the business. It was just him. These were 12, 14-hour days. So he asked me to read this book, and I think, okay, maybe this will help us. So I read the book, and I had the same kind of reaction. I was like, it sounds like you're a visionary, and it sounds kind of like I'm an integrator. So has anybody, everybody in here read Traction? Yeah. So, there's sort of two different camps, and then there's, all the space in between, but we do seem to kind of gravitate toward these two different areas. And so from there, we were kind of like, well, maybe it makes sense that you can, he was doing pretty much everything, putting out all the fires, but I thought, I can do some of the nuts and bolts kind of stuff that you're not able to do to kind of help regrow the business, because it was down to, there was a couple $1,000s in the bank. And
so you were helping part-time. Heather just decided to dig in and help me out part-time.
Right, there was no website, there was no presence on Google, we needed to get business, or I say he needed to get business coming in. So I was kind of doing these things, helped you hire a couple people.
And, when we were putting this talk together, I think it came to surface that Heather really didn't see what her value was in that time. Like, there was some difficulty. She was working remotely. She didn't have physical connection to anybody in the office, didn't feel like she really had authority. Do you care to maybe explain what some of that might have been about?
Yeah, so that, again, my work was peripheral in a lot of ways, but if I needed something, from the office, a financial report, some, customer data, whatever it was, like, I would reach out and not get a response from the one person that I think you had hired at that point. I'd put the website together and I'd be like, look how pretty, it's like the colors and it all looks nice, and he'd be like, sure, and it seemed as though it didn't have much impact. And so I was thinking, well, I'm doing this on the side, not a big deal. And I think when he said, when we were setting this talk up, I didn't realize that I had any impact at that point.
Yeah, and what she was doing was really making a big difference in the work that started to flow in. Now, at this time, we weren't doing design, build, or model. We were doing a lot of structural revisions, wood rot, and we were doing well at it. We were making money, but at this point, I had suffered hundreds of thousands of dollars in embezzlement. We were still in the hole, hundreds of thousands of dollars, so it was kind of touch and go for quite some time. But as we were building momentum, getting some of these debts paid off, getting more stability, or what we thought was stability, I was still running the company haphazardly. The thought came that, if Heather can dig deep and be this integrator person, that we could really, and bear in mind, integrator, in my mind, at that point in time, it was just very high level, the understanding of what an integrator really does, or what a visionary really is about.
You knew the integrator did the boring detail stuff that you didn't want to have to mess with.
A little bit. I didn't really understand entirely all of that. But I just thought that if I could get her to come on board, what was going through your mind? Because there was still some instability, so I'm interested to hear that. And I'm going to take some notes while you say that, so I can.
It was probably, I think it was about 6 months before I actually decided to come on board that you mentioned it. And I remember thinking, you're joking, right? Like, I couldn't believe that this was a legitimate idea that he was trying to float, because, the business was barely keeping him going, and they would have to pay 2 salaries. I couldn't come on for free. I couldn't leave my job. But, over time, I was like, well, I'm not super excited about what I'm doing right now. I was in managed care. I was in kind of the managed care field of the mental health, bigger field.
I remember that you were very unfulfilled in what you were doing. Your finger would hover over the keyboard at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and you'd be out.
Right. So there was, there was no impact that I was making. I didn't get to be creative. I didn't get to, any feedback I gave. The CEO of a 100,000 person company really doesn't care what you think. Or that was my impression anyway. So I thought, how often do you get a chance to change careers and have somebody who believes in you? So, I think it was around the end of the summer probably of 2020, so COVID had started, that I said, all right, let's do it.
Yeah, so we got married. I better marry her, otherwise somebody else is going to find her, I thought. We got married earlier in that year, and September 2020, at this point, I had been the only person running the business until that time.
15 years of you doing it
15
by
years.
yourself.
Heather comes on board. Her first day, We actually were delayed on a return trip from a long weekend. 2020, COVID, September 2020, chaos. That was Heather's first day. She walked into an office where everything was shut down. Our admin person had gotten COVID while we were away, and she sent everybody home for 2 weeks. There were voicemails that we couldn't access. There were passwords, a lot of things that we could not access. There were appointments that were missed from the salesman that we had in time at that time. So what was that like? Because to me, it would be really scary.
Uh-huh.
It was scary then for me.
Right. I mean, it certainly drove home the notion that he needed help because this was a shit show that I walked into. But it was also scary. I was like, I am really out of my element here. I have no idea what I'm doing. But it was sink or swim because I had left I had resigned from my job. I could have gone back, I guess, but it was like, I've already made this commitment. So I remember so many things, little things, big things over time that I would ask you, I don't know how to do this. Because again, I didn't know anything about construction or business. I was just like, I've got to get it done attitude, so I'll try to get it done. But when I would ask you, do you remember what you would always say to me when I would ask for help?
Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't know myself what the answers to some of these questions were. I was very busy trying to figure a lot of things out to keep people on jobs, to get more work so that we could keep cash flow. And I told Heather, you're going to have to figure it out. Figure it out. You're very intelligent, and I believe in you.
Yeah.
And, in that, there were a lot of other things as time passed that we needed to figure out if we were going to work together. And our relationship was and is still the most important thing to me. But I knew that we could figure out how we could work together and be successful at it so that we didn't hate each other.
Yeah, and honestly, we didn't have a lot of tools in our toolkit at that point. I mean,
Yeah.
we knew enough to manage a relationship, but we didn't, there were so many soft skills that we just didn't have because we didn't have to do those things, So learning to set boundaries, so not only were we working together, but we were living about 90 miles from where the office was. So every day we were driving 90 miles one direction and then working and then driving home. So we had 3 hours on the road, a lot of time.
Or be mad at one another.
So there were a lot of silent rides home. But yeah, there was a lot of just griping and, and from both of our parts. It's nobody in particular, but there was just like work never ended. It was just 24/7 of just being saturated with a lot of challenges because we were in a tough spot, I think, for the first, year or two. So we had to learn how to be honest with each other and how to say, hey, listen, we're in this together. We're on the same team, but, we have to give each other some grace and allow some space for comfort, allow space, because for a long time I remember saying to you that it felt like our marriage was just the basket that held the company, and that's not what, that was not what I wanted. And I don't think that's what you wanted, and so we really had to learn to kind of set those boundaries, and when one person wanted to talk about business, and that this is to this day, if somebody wants to talk about work, you have to ask if it's outside of work. Is it okay if we talk about this? I had this idea, but, and the other person can say no, and we respect that. But it took some time, and it took some bravery to be able to be honest and have some of those hard conversations.
And none of this was overnight. I mean, we were stumbling through this. I mean, role clarity, right? Visionary integrator. Still really didn't have a solid, idea of what that was entirely.
And
going, please.
With the accountability, accountability is, in one sense of the word, it's doing what you say you're going to do. So if we say we're going to do something, we do it. But accountability for us now has adapted more to mean like, what are your accountabilities? What are your roles? What are the specifics of what you do? Yeah. And in order to do what you do in your role, whatever that is, and my role continued to grow over time. I started doing marketing stuff, and I started doing some of the HR stuff and the systems and processes. Lots of things, hiring, but I don't know if I didn't or if I didn't feel like I didn't have a lot of autonomy because, again, for 15 years he'd made all the decisions. So I felt like I had to run everything through him, get his approval. I didn't like that.
And it's very valid, right? Heather's coming from a mental health background, so she wasn't familiar even with a lot of the construction terminology. I went to college and got a bachelor's degree in construction management. I knew in theory, conceptually, what a work in progress report was. I knew in theory what job costing was. I couldn't tell you how to put that stuff together. And I couldn't even explain it to Heather for her to really figure out. So, to me, there was a lot of, what do I let go of? How do I let go of the vine here? And I think for Heather, there was a lot of unknowns that, what do I need to run by and what don't I?
Because I went from being something of an expert in my field. I mean, I had gone to school for this. I had done this for a couple of decades in the mental health field. So I knew what I was doing, just to a large degree, and then to come in and not feel like an expert at all and not feel like I had autonomy. So, I think that a couple of takeaways here in these early phases were about, the setting the boundaries, remembering that you're in it together and that, you're a united front even when you don't feel like one. But also that when somebody has account, and this is applicable for teams, whatever your team structure is that when you're giving somebody accountabilities, responsibilities, there has to be autonomy that goes along with that, and you have to decide what those measurements are.
Right. So even setting the guidelines between that, I mean, we were beginning to learn what guidelines that we should set and some that we shouldn't. We fumbled a lot along the way. And I think what we always came back to was our relationship. What was more important?
Right. And starting to really, take those moments where we could step back and take a deep breath and find value in what the other one brought to the table. Because to this day, there's things that he does that I could never do. He walks into these HBA networking things, and I just think I would rather die than walk into a room full of these people, or go out on sales calls and stuff. And the same thing, if I'm sitting behind just geeking out on a spreadsheet that I built and putting all the colors in it, and he's just like, that looks awful.
It's like
but we value what one another brings to the table, and we know that we're working together to move things
So
forward.
2020, you start, we're chugging along,
Yeah.
we're making this progress together.
We're selling a little bit of work.
We're selling work,
Yeah.
we're stumbling. We've got, no idea what we're doing. And we're just struggling. And I said to Heather, I just feel like we need to work with somebody. If there's a magic formula, if there's a roadmap that we could follow, we could be successful. We could really generate something. And, coincidentally, we just got involved with the Home Builders Association in our municipality, in our county, or the next county over. And, coincidentally, we met Luke Dobbins. He is an RA member here. He's not here today. And we were telling him this story, and he said, man, RA. And I was like, what did he say? And she
Remodelers
said,
Anonymous. What
I
is
don't know
this?
what that is.
Yeah.
So we found out. We contacted Steve, got some information, and we were soon after signed up for Jumpstart. Now, how overwhelming was Jumpstart for the people that have signed on to RA? We were already busy putting out fires day in and day out, and then we have to figure out how we're going to hash out the time to go through Jumpstart.
Yeah.
Now, with Jumpstart, we're in the beginning of Remodelers Anonymous.
Yes.
Remodelers Advantage. You've got disc testing. And, why don't you share what your experience was with your first disc test?
So, working full days, want to get on the road, beat traffic. We have our hour-and-a-half drive home. And I just got about 15 minutes before he's about to be ready. I'm like, let me knock out this disc test. 45 minutes later, I'm still answering these incredibly repetitive questions. I'm so frustrated and I'm getting them done. And then I finally get to the end of this thing, and it tells me that I'm a high D. And to me, that was domineering jackass. I was just like, this. So I took this test just to be told that I am so unpleasant to be around. This is awful. So I go in and get in the truck, and he's taking his, and he's like, ooh, did you take that test? He was all excited about it. He said, I'm an I. I was like, yeah, I know you're an I. Everybody knows that you're a high I. And he's all jazzed about it, and I am so mad about this test.
I didn't know, I reviewed my results.
Quickly, brief overview, because you didn't want to.
I didn't even know what the data really revealed.
Yeah.
And, it's kind of funny. I'm a high I. What's that mean? Well, I probably just skimmed over the results and really didn't understand them because I'm a high I.
Picked out a couple things he liked, moved on. Yeah.
So she told me what I was because she's got that C in there where she analyzes the data.
Right. So as you can see from this, our discs are almost inversely proportional. I mean, we are pretty solidly opposites. But the cool thing, and it's worked out nicely, is that what he is. So this is Phil with his let's talk all the possibilities. Let's revisit the same topics over and over. He is very much in that integrator realm. So visionary realm.
Definitely not an integrator.
Not integrator. No. Visionary.
Yeah.
So, all this stuff really lines up with what he does. So once again, we've kind of solidified that you are the people person, that sales is great for you. Working with trade partners is great for you, going out and networking, all these things.
But it took us a while to really kind of figure out what that place was and really start to iron out what the roles were. On the front end of it, learning about the disc, and it took several months. We're still learning. But as things started to crystallize what our disc profiles were, it gave us more clarity in who does what and why. It gave us a better understanding of one another, why we do the things that we do. It enabled us to better communicate, right? There's things about Heather that I didn't understand. We'd get out of a meeting and she's just bolts, and I'm like, man, is she pissed off? She's a D, man. She wants to get stuff done, where I want to hang out and talk about it and rehash it out. So,
Yep.
So, and we continue to learn. So, is there anything else on the disc that you want to cover?
I guess so this, certainly for us personally, this really solidified that we had a clear division of labor here. And it was great because the things that I like to do were right in my wheelhouse. And same, I think, is true for you. But regardless, anybody working together, I think just understanding and really delving into what your disc profiles are, because I've seen couples, we've got one in our group that their profiles are very similar, but they still have to divide up what their roles are. So I wonder, I don't know from experience, but I wonder if that's a different type of challenge where, you've got more similar disc profiles, so then you have to figure out, would I like doing this thing, but I like doing this thing too, and how to divide that up. So, the disc has been great. I love it.
It's a wonderful tool, and not just for us, but our relationships with our children have improved by the understanding of it. Our communication with our team has really.
You
improved.
use it even on sales calls,
Sales calls,
all the time.
So we're chugging along, and we continue to gain this acumen. We're learning more and more. Along the way, we hired a wonderful coach. His name is Michael Hodgin.
He's here in our audience today.
And, Michael has taught us a lot of things. We actually went on a retreat earlier this year where we've been able to cultivate enough freedom to back away a little bit from the day-to-day. So we went away for a week on a retreat. And we really began to dig into the intrinsics of why we're doing what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
We'd ridden out a lot of highs and lows, and
yeah. So more lows on the front end, but we've gotten to the point over the years. So this has been, we were right at 5. I think it was 5 years ago this week that I started. So, so in that amount of time, we've definitely made progress. We've had more successes, more highs, and they don't have to be, we sold a huge job. It can be, man, that team meeting was really great. Did you hear all the good questions that so-and-so was asking? Or, man, can you believe we found such a great designer that we just work so well with? It's just the little things. And I would say to you, I would say that, I'd be like, oh man, wasn't that great? Or can you believe we're getting such good leads? And what would you always say?
Yeah, but.
Always. And it's funny that the speaker this morning said the same thing. There was always that but, and it was just crushing.
And I just didn't want to take my foot off the accelerator because we were starting to achieve successes, and I felt like that was backing away. And what I failed to do is really lean into gratitude. Now I do a meditation every morning, and in that meditation is gratitude. And wasn't very outwardly expressing my gratitude to the incremental successes that we were having. And I really needed to, be more intentional, to cultivate more of a growth mindset around gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
And, the growth mindset, speaking of that, is one of the most important things that you can have as a couple who's working together. Couples that grow together, just like teams that grow together, they stay together. And one of the greatest gifts that I have experienced in this journey is to see Heather blossom into not only an industry professional, but an industry leader. So that growth mindset is so important. In that growth mindset and through that retreat that we had with Michael, you want to talk about some mission, value, purpose type stuff?
Yeah. So the retreat that we went on is, based on the idea, and this was mentioned this morning, or again, I think yesterday in your talk as well, that, your business is the vehicle that takes you down the road of your life, and you get to decide what that path is, and you get to decide where you're going. But you need to know what that looks like. You need to know what your values really are. Because it's not just, can we sell more jobs? Can we be the preeminent, remodeler in our area? I mean, those are great goals. But at the end of the day, it's what your true values are. So I just called it MVPs because it's sort of catchy. Mission, values, purpose. So we've got those on our trucks. We've got them on our website. We've got them on our T-shirts. So we're letting our clients know, as a company, what our values and our mission are. But as individuals, we have to be really clear about what that is and whether we're living in alignment with that. Yeah. And then we have to let our partner know what that looks like, because it's not going to be the same. I mean, it may be similar, but it's not, and nobody's going to have the exact same set of values. And that was one of the things that we were challenged to do was, answer some hard questions, take walks together every day, talk about, what the deep stuff is. And,
there were things that we probably weren't in alignment with.
Yeah. I mean, we don't see things the same way, and we don't value maybe things the same way, but we understand and respect that we do have our own, our own set of sort of core values. Yeah. And so you want to talk a little bit about how that all lines up together?
Yeah. Heather has put together the myth of balance here, that, balance is more like a 50-50 type deal. You always say something about a scale.
Yeah, or like little kids on a seesaw. For one to go up, the other one has to go down. So there has to be this inverse that you can't both be up.
Yeah. And the important thing with that is that balance really is a myth. As we explored our mission, value, purpose, we realized that we both have to be pulling in the same direction to move the business, but we both also have to be pulling in the same direction for one another. My mission, value, purpose really leads me down a path towards freedom. And it's pretty natural, being a high I, that I would want those types of things. And for Heather, her values, her mission, her purpose is a little bit different. Mm-hmm. And I have to be happy not that I have to, I should say I get to be happy when she gets to experience some of the things that she's really gone after. She works hard. We both work hard. So learning how to split that difference, not really split the difference, but come into alignment in what's important for her, and her to come into alignment what's important for me, was really, really crucial. And that leads us to the power of pivot.
Yeah, so depending on what your roles are and how you've got your sort of division of labor in your company, it may be that somebody has a lot more freedom in their day and somebody's behind the desk all the time. Or somebody gets to travel and come to events like this and somebody has to stay home, whatever it may be. And I mean, there's certainly a healthy breeding ground for resentment there. And so, we have to be conscientious about making the choice to see these things as an opportunity to lean into that alignment. An example, this is not a happy example, but year and a half ago, we were at our case study, at our
Well, we were
roundtable,
there.
halfway across the country.
In Texas.
He gets
We're from North Carolina.
Yeah, so he gets a phone call that his mom is in the emergency room and she's being moved to hospice. Shit, we're in the middle of a business meeting. We've got competing priorities, clearly. So we get home from the meeting and find out that things are declining pretty rapidly, and unfortunately she passed away within just a few weeks. And he said to me, I need you to handle things at work. I need you to handle this because I've got.
I had a mess.
A mess.
Really sift through and clean up.
Yeah, and I remember I was like, okay, all hands on deck. I got this. So I told her, I was like, I got this. Do what you need to do. I'll take care of things. And we have a great team now, fortunately, that was certainly willing to all pull together. But after kind of the dust settled on that, I remember thinking, man, what a cool opportunity I had to be able to really jump in there and give him what he needed. And that's an opportunity that you don't get necessarily when you work in two totally different industries. He would still have to deal with the company. I couldn't do it if I was working somewhere else. But there's positive things too.
Yeah,
That's an extreme example. But for him to be able to take a week to go out riding gnarly terrain, snowboarding, I don't want to do that. But he and his son love to go do that together. So, go.
And I know that things are taken care of back home, and for Heather to be able to take pleasure in covering for me when I'm gone, and my perspectives are much the same. When Heather has things to do, she leaves the office several times during the week to go to her barn, meet the farrier, do things that need to be done. And I'm really jazzed to see her be able to do that. I'm really excited for her when she gets to go see her daughter play soccer. Mm-hmm. So that's very important. It could be a breeding ground for resentment if you have the wrong perspectives, and that you have the perspective that you've got to carry that 50-50 weight.
Yeah, and you see that somebody else is getting more freedom or more this or more that, or whatever it may be. And so when it's a choice. It's an intentional choice to see it as an opportunity. It's kind of the antidote to resentment that we've figured out over time. And again, none of this was seamless. None of this was perfect. Still not.
I'm
but
taking notes, by the way.
Did we miss anything on here?
No,
I don't think so.
We got through everything: the gratitude, the myth of balance,
all right, cool.
Intentionality with a growth mindset. Michael, did we miss anything?
You didn't say where you went on the tree.
We went where we went?
Yeah.
We went to Costa Rica.
To a small island town that I can't pronounce.
Playa Estorioso Oeste.
That's where we went. We got to see Michael. No, we didn't get to see you surf because you were recovering at that point. But we got to try surfing. Yeah, it's great. It's fantastic. Yep. Wonderful opportunity to really explore some deeper stuff that we wouldn't have been prompted to do necessarily. So, in short, RA has been huge for us in so many ways. Has really prompted us to grow as in business, but even more so together, I think.
So you want to tell them what we told them?
What? Oh yeah. Yes. So because I like to make things. Thank you.
And I like Venn diagrams because they're busy.
He's really into circles.
So as you can see here that it's convoluted.
Yeah, if it looks complicated, it's because it is complicated. If it were linear, I think a lot more people would just cruise along and run businesses together. But there's a lot of parts to this, and a lot of things that we had to learn, and a lot of layers. But this is my version of a summary. This is my high D integrator version of a summary.
I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to skim over it.
Some of the key points that we touched. He's just going to look at the colors and be happy about the little fire on there. But at the center of it is a powerful place. But it takes work, and it takes patience, and it takes kindness, and the reminder that you're in it together.
Yeah. In the center of it is really what's most important, and that's the relationship.
Yeah.
The reason why we're building this business.
Yeah, absolutely. So just a couple of takeaways, and again, just to give it a little bit more structure, that the roles are really important. And we've got some book recommendations at the end that, for those of you who haven't read them or heard of them, we'll have them and can certainly share more with you. But the more that you can, and there's other other ways to do it too. The more that you can drill down into what you're really good at, and the love, hate, tolerate that we've talked about, I think earlier today or yesterday maybe.
Michael mentioned something of it. Well, he bailed out, but Michael Hodgin mentions a lot about a love, hate, tolerate.
Yeah.
And Michael Suari mentions things about
Right, to
a
help
love,
you.
loathe list.
Yeah, to determine what you really like to do, what you want to offload, and maybe the other person is better at doing that anyway. So whatever method you use to figure out how not to step on each other's toes, I think is really beneficial. Mindset is just huge. Mindset is huge for everybody in this room, for everybody in this building. Mindset is just an incredibly important part of
Can I add to
living
that?
a full life. Yes.
I mean, as humans, we're naturally drawn toward a negativity bias, and we make up stories in our minds. It's so important to not validate those stories. Don't make them real. That auto programming is not valid. Focusing
Anymore.
on that gratitude mindset is something that's very, 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 very important as you chug along the path of working as a team, whether it's with your child, your spouse, so on and so forth.
Yeah, and you know, there's so much out there that to foster that. I mean, there's just countless books on mindset. You know, there's podcasts, there's classes, there's practices that you can do, all kinds of things to really foster your mindset and always be open to growth. You never know it all. Neither one of us do, and so to be open to, you know, somebody else's perspective. I think the other one's perspective is really important. And then finally, just putting these things into practice. You know, it's great to talk about boundaries, but if you don't actually adhere to them or honor them, then you're not really helping each other along.
Fences, not walls.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, that dynamic alignment again. It's, you know, he may want to be away from. He likes being away from work more than I do. I don't mind sitting there and doing the things, but I like to have the freedom to feel like I'm really filling my bucket in different ways. And, you know, so just having that alignment and being able to support each other through that. So that is what we got. These are, you know, again, just a short list of books, and then there's a link at the bottom to rocketfueluniversity.com as if you want to do the basic visionary integrator sort of scale test thing.
Got a QR code with our contact information, so if you're working together as a couple and you'd like to speak to another couple who's working together and figure out what some of our challenges have been that may be similar to yours,
Yeah, absolutely reach
we're happy
out.
to help you out.
Yeah, to reach out to either or both of us. We will get back to you. Whether it's, you know, whether we hear from you next week, next year, we would be happy to help because, you know, certainly we've had people that have helped us along the way.
Yeah. So thank you for coming to our talk. We do accept standing ovations.